Welcome to the FiPL Farm Diaries, brought to you by the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority. FiPL stands for Farming in Protected Landscapes, a programme funded by Defra that helps farmers and land managers in England's national parks and national landscapes access funding for projects supporting climate, nature, people and place. In each episode, we'll dig into a particular part of a project that's received FiPL funding. And while we focus on one theme at a time, every story is part of a much bigger picture, showing how these projects and people are working together to shape the future of farming in the Yorkshire Dales landscape. Join us as we meet the people making a difference and discover how farming in protected landscapes is delivering for the Dales, one story at a time. Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of the FiPL Farm Diaries. This episode is all about restoring the heritage of the national parks, the man-made heritage, so in particular barns and Drystone walls. So the first person that we're going to go and speak to is Julia Carr. Julia is farming in Marwick up near Richmond, and she was involved in a project to restore a barn. As we'll hear from Julia, it wasn't just a barn, it was a brew house at one point. Let's hear what Julia's got to say.
So when I started really being in charge of the land and the barns and things on it, I knew this was in bad repair.
Yeah.
Because the roof had some work done before we'd moved here on this side, and that end, the other end, the north end of the roof wasn't too bad, but the middle was very dodgy, and it wouldn't have survived, for long really. So in about 2009-10, I started looking around for grant help because there's no way I could afford to do it. It's incredibly expensive to renovate these sort of barns. And there was a stone barn restoration grant in 2018 going, and I applied for that, and I wasn't successful. I was told it wasn't important enough and it wasn't visible enough, and other barns took priority, so I failed at that one. And I kept, sort of looking around for different grants, but there was nothing really around until FiPL. But so FiPL had this barn restoration grant, so that I obviously leapt at that. But there were 31 barns in for application for the money, and so it was assessed, and it didn't get into the first. It came, I think it ranked somewhere in the middle of the scoring for all those barns. And at that time, I don't think people realised how important it was. Anyway, so it needed a lot of repair work. It needed the whole of the middle of the roof redoing, and some extra repair work at the top end of the roof there. It needed the closures, the windows on both sides doing, because they didn't exist. There was a lot of cracks within this side and the back end, the northern end into the bank as well, and in the front end. And the guttering was nowhere really. Well, there were bits on it, but not a lot. So it was a lot of work, and the steps that we were going to have a look around the other side needed work on. So it was going to be a big project. The other problem is getting builders down here with the materials.
Yeah, it's not that accessible, is it?
No. And also, a lot of people didn't want the work. It was messy work, really. It was coming down here. Anyway, what happened was the grant that was available required the owner to fund at least 20% of it.
Yep.
So, and that even that isn't a very attractive proposition. But I went for it, and I think what happened, some of the other barns and the owners that might have been ahead of me were unable to make that commitment, unable to make the commitment to do the work in the way that FiPL wanted it done.
Brilliant.
So I snuck up the line, and eventually, sure enough, they came to me and said, well, you can have it, you can have the grant if you want to.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's very, very lucky.
Yeah, well, you were telling me on the way down, Julia, this isn't just a normal barn. Just give us a bit of the history of it.
Yeah, it was probably built in the early 18th century, we think. And at that time, we think it was probably built as a brew house. And the agricultural side of it didn't come in until probably the early 19th century.
Yep.
And there were adaptations then.
Yes.
You know, so forking holes put in or shipping put in inside, as we'll see. So before then, we're pretty sure it was a brew house. And when we go inside, you can see how the logic runs of where the grain would have come in. And of course, these fields would have been good for growing barley.
Yes.
And so they would have brought the barley in, and probably into this end, and moved through all the various processes of beer making to the back. And then there was another area that had been demolished a long time ago, which might have well been a drinking place for visitors, as well as the beer making process. Yep. So just backtracking a bit as to why this brewery would have been built here originally, because it's in the middle of nowhere. But at that time, everybody covered a lot of ground by foot. And they would come from different places. Marwick Park, which is over that way, was a big area, big estate. And it joined on to Marwick Village, all the land in between, to Marwick Village, which is up there. And then Downholm is over that way. And then along this way, along where now is the new road up the dale, there's a priory, Ellerton Priory. So the word Ella is important because of alder trees. It sort of links to alder trees, and along all the side of the rivers is often obviously alder trees. This lane here is now what we call an old green lane, but would have been a major route up to Marwick Village, and it's called Ella's Lane. Mm-hmm. So that's really not passable by vehicle up there, but it would have been passable for certainly drovers and people, coming from the other villages nearby. So this would have been a major crossing point and meeting point for Downholm, Ellerton Priory, Marwick Village and Marwick Park. So it was an ideal place, really, to stop for a pint. Yeah. And if you look here, straight ahead here, you'll see evidence of some building into the wall there. And what we think, there's a demolished eastern elevation there, a building there that's long been demolished. But we think that's where the final stages of brewing would have occurred. And there may well have been a drinking place there as well. So it's sort of built into the bank, if you like. And the reason probably for the sort of orientation is because the back of the barn would need to be cool and built into the bank and dark, because the sort of final process of malting before you start using the malted barley needs to be dark, in the dark and the cool. So what I think is that the barley would have come off here, been put into this building. There was another opening at this top above this window. So this opening here was probably a later one for forking.
Yeah, you can just see, can't you, the stonework? Yeah.
But above will have been for airflow, we think, to help dry the barley during the threshing process. Mm-hmm. So threshing would have happened this end, and then it would have been moved on through different sections, as we'll have a look, for starting to do the malting process, really, and the germination of the barley, the malted barley. So there are stages which make it completely logical, and then finally into that elevation. So there were cracks in this side which we've repaired under the grant and done really well, so you can hardly see where they've been done. And then on this elevation, we've redone the openings, and we've done them in line with how they might well have been, although they might not have been that colour. But and the stone steps up to the higher level we've redone as well as we want to redo them. Anyway, they're all stable now. You can see up to that last door. And then obviously all the roof, which was a big job. And the guttering, guttering is metal guttering. Yeah. So that's, more in keeping, really. So one of the most unusual things, when I first started to clear this one out, the most unusual find is these flags.
Yeah.
You can see this area when I started work on it was about this high in animal muck, because in the 19th century onwards, animals were allowed in here, obviously for shelter and the winter. So the dung took a lot of clearing. It was that high. And underneath we found these massive flags. I mean, this one here goes from there right the way along to here. It's
it is a big one.
Nearly 2 meters long.
Yeah.
Enormous, absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
So now we've got all that cleared out, we can see the floor. It's obviously a good floor for threshing.
Yeah.
And so it's too good for here now, really, but there's no way we'd move it. So it's so unusual. This is probably the area where the corn would have come in.
Yeah.
And the higher opening, which you can't really see from inside because of the light, would have been to get the airflow. And this big opening beneath was probably a later addition of forking. So it would have been threshed here. And we suspect that the straw from the threshing process might have been used to fuel the beer making.
Ah, right.
So it would have to drop into vats before that anyway. So that could have well been recycled. And then the grains would have been moved to this to dry and be turned. Hence the need for a decent floor.
Decent floor, yeah.
And then that would have been put up here through this opening here, which is a big opening for the next stage. So
amazing. And you've got some birds in here by the look of it. What sort of...
Yeah, we've certainly got barn owls. You can see, and in this for at least 2 springs running, we've had barn owls nesting and hatching.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's quite a fresh one. So they're in and out of here this time of the year, which is great.
Yeah. And when you were, so that is a good question actually. When you were restoring this, obviously you would have had to have surveys and all that kind of thing. Did you have wildlife surveys done?
We didn't have to have wildlife surveys, but the grant was for the work to be done in the 2022-23 seasons.
Right.
So we left it, and it suited us anyway, as late as possible into 23, because then there was no bird activity.
Yes, they weren't hatching or anything yet.
It's better for the bats as well, because you probably might have seen the bat boxes.
I did, yeah.
So it wasn't a crucial time for the owls. It was an ideal time.
Good stuff.
It was a hard time for building.
Yeah.
It was wet, and not particularly lovely to work in. So this is a later addition.
Yeah.
Shippen,
that you were talking about.
Yeah, so that'll be 19th century. But this is where it would have had a floor, and that's been restored before my time up here, the floor, to put the barley on. And then it would have come down here, and it's darker in this area as well, but it would come down here to start the malting process. And also it goes in big vats at some stage as well to encourage a germination. So we've got bat box in here now barn owl box here. You can see some of the droppings recently. We just clear it out every now and then, not very often. We don't clear it completely. So the grain would have been here and probably dropped down through a trapdoor to below. And then moved on to here with vats, and you can see there's evidence of a fireplace here. So that will have may well have been for heating water. And this is the cool, dark place that I told you about, which is for really important. And actually, Amy, what I didn't show you in here, if you look at the walls, they're lime plastered.
Yes.
And the reason for that would have been hygiene. Lime's an antiseptic.
Yeah.
So it's been highly unusual for an agricultural barn.
Yes.
To be plastered like this.
Yeah. What are these circles? Are they?
So I've had people look at them and nobody knew what it is, but Peter Reynolds says he's the senior listing buildings was in the Dale, and he's done, trained in archaeology and old buildings. He said these were often drawn on walls to ward away the evil spirits. Daisy chain sort of daisy looks, because if you look here, there's been a nail being put in here and then interlinking daisies.
They haven't been drawn by hand, have they?
No, they've been intentionally put on there. And interesting that not many people know about them either. No, I've spoken to other people, so we're grateful to Peter Reynolds, really, who told us about that. Said this. See how thick that wall is. That's into the bank of this north end of this elevation of the barn, and that will have been to keep the cool for the final process. And the building here now, I mean, it's difficult to imagine what it would have looked like, because we've got concrete put down probably later for sheep handling or whatever. But you can imagine that the brewery process might have gone on in this half, and there'd be an ale house at that end there.
So in terms of restoring and maintaining the heritage of the Dales, Julie, like this barn in particular has got such a lot of history, as you've spoken about. It is so important, isn't it, to maintain it? I mean, you could argue that this, as you said, there's no public access to this. There's no roads. You can't get to it. So what does it matter if it's not here? But it does, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And one of the things I would like to do, and perhaps if FiPL was going on for longer, which I'm not sure that it is once I realise the social history and how rare it is and how important it is to see buildings like this, I was trying to think of ways to make it accessible for people. And, obviously we can't, and we wouldn't necessarily want to put a big footpath that took this in because of where it would have to go. But there might be some way of people being able to have access to it. If it was documented somewhere and people wanted to come see it, we could get them to come and walk down Ella's Lane, come and look at the barn here and sort of book in or whatever, but and have information boards so they would understand it.
Yes.
I'd still really like to do that, because it's not very, it's not very exciting unless you come and see it.
No, it's not. And there's such a story behind it. There's such a story behind it, isn't there?
And decent money was spent on it to get it so that it was staying. But it's only a value. Really.
Yeah, it is.
Really. And learn from it, and learn how people used to live in those days.
Yeah.
The miles they'd walk, and how tired and thirsty they must have been, and what welcome places must have been to fall onto.
Yeah. Now stopping for a pint in Yorkshire is just a thing that's always gone on, hasn't it?
It still goes on, yes.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, doing it properly is really important, and it was an expensive project. And the builder that did it did do a really good job, to such an extent you probably can't easily see where he's done the repairs in the elevations where there was cracks down. So he's done a really good job, so it will last. And it's just protected. We've come down from higher up where it's quite windy. It's just protected down here.
It's in a nice little dip,
wind.
Isn't it? Yeah,
it's a lovely spot.
Yeah.
And behind you there was well, and there is still water and springs. So it all fits in with the beer making process.
Yeah.
So it would be a nice day's walk for people.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's obviously a couple of bat boxes inside. Is that a barn owl box?
Kestrel box on the outside, bat boxes on the side.
Yeah.
So we do get a lot of kestrels around here. We get a lot of bats, because behind you in what we call Snipe Alley, is an ideal habitat for them. And then the barn owls, if you disturb them in the spring, Snipe Alley is a great place for them to go and watch what you're up to if you go, if you're going to have a peep. Yeah,
and that is so important, isn't it? If these buildings were left to rack and ruin and just fell down, there would not be a habitat, would there, for those that wildlife?
Absolutely.
So that's a whole nother angle to it.
Yes. So when I came and lived in 2002 to this area, the barns on the land weren't fenced off, so animals were allowed in and out obviously for shelter, but also cattle especially, there would be damage done. So I put fences around all the barns so that we could maintain them a bit and not have the damage done, and to see what goes on. Floors tell you a big story, obviously.
Absolutely,
both for livestock handling, but beer making as well.
So the next person that we're going to speak to in this episode is Chris Fawcett. Chris is farming up near Kirkby Longsdale and received a FiPL grant to restore a sheepfold that's been there longer than his family on that farm. So Chris also does a little bit of drystone walling as well as farming. So he's made a right good job of this sheepfold. So again, if you want to see this in all its glory, have a look over on YouTube because there's some really good footage on there as well. But let's hear what Chris has got to say.
Yeah, my name is Chris Fawcett and I'm a sheep farmer and drystone waller. And we have some suckler cows as well, but they live outside all the time. We are in the Tuckon of Lancashire here, where I live, but the land is in Yorkshire. And the cows that we keep are in Cumbria.
Oh, wow. So, split across all three then. Yeah, brilliant, good stuff. Right, so we're here today, Chris, to talk about a project, a FiPL project that you did that was restoring a sheepfold. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So just tell us, what did you put in for when you applied, and what have you done since?
We put in to restore and improve the sheep pens that we were doing that have dilapidated over the years, and that's what we put in for. And we because we got the grant, it made us make a really proper job of it and a useful job of it. And so it's easy to use now and a lot better. There's no sheep jumping out. It's all done. Yeah. And you said before that this is you say 4 generations on the farm? Yeah, 4 generations on the farm and on that land where we did the sheep pens. Yeah. So they've been there a long time? Yes, they have. Yeah. The sheep pens have been there longer than we have. Really. Yeah. And so this was obviously all drystone walling. Did you do the work yourself? Yeah, we did the work. Me and my son did the work, and another lad helps us every so often. And but we did the majority of the work ourselves. Brilliant. And it's fully functional now. You're using it as a sheepfold. Yeah, we got grants not only for the drystone walling, but for the gates and a few fences to help gather into the pens. And it's a lot easier to manage the sheep now. Yeah, brilliant. Because it's important, isn't it, to keep the heritage going. You know, if they've been there a long time, they want to be in good repair, but it's also brilliant that you can now use it for your, it's satisfying when you can see you've done the work and it's put a lot of effort into it. Yeah, brilliant. So you're a drystone waller yourself then, so you must be fairly keen on making a good job. Yes, we always try and make a good job of whatever we're doing. Right, dig out right to the bottom and start from the bottom. Yeah, and did you use all the stone that was there already? All the stone was used that was there already. Yeah. And did you need to bring any extra in or not? We did bring some extra for the top of the wall because a lot of it had been smashed up and broken over. It's limestone, you see, so some of it can break very easily. Yeah. And so that would be broken up and put in as fillings into the wall, and we got some more tops. Yeah. And you spoke earlier about it. It's a triple SI, is it, up there? The land, that allotment is, yeah. And so we had to do something different, and somebody suggested FiPL, and that's why we went. Yeah, and you worked with Laura Mealing. Laura Mealing, yeah, she's very good and helped us a lot. Yeah, she did. Excellent. So, what would you say to farmers that are maybe thinking of doing the same? In your experience, has it been a worthwhile thing? Yeah, very worthwhile. Yeah, you've got to go through the process, and there's a lot of paperwork, which I suppose a lot of farmers will complain about, really, because they don't like paperwork, but I can see why it has to be like that. Yeah. And but once you get into the system, it's quite easy to do. And I've got a younger generation, and so they help on the computers and the paperwork a lot. So as part of the grant that you applied for, did they want you to do it yourself, or could you have used a contractor if you wanted to? We had to get 3 estimates to put in. And we were always going to do it ourselves. So the estimates, there's people that gave us some idea what they would charge, and so we knew what we would charge. Yeah. And we went from there. But it's quite easy. You know what the wall is about, and they know what the job is, and so they can just do it all by email now. It doesn't take a lot of doing. So if you do a lot of drystone walling, then you're obviously, it really is they're a feature, aren't they, of the Dales, let's be honest. And it's nothing better than seeing a new drystone wall. There's quite a lot that are down and dilapidated. It doesn't look good on the countryside. No. And so this project, this FiPL grant money you can get, has helped a lot of farmers. And if anybody's thinking of doing it, it's worthwhile. Yeah. But make sure you apply for enough money, because it takes more time than you think. Yeah, well, it's, they're a work of art, aren't they? You drive down the Dale and some of them are like, they're vertically. Yeah, that's right. How's somebody done that? takes a lot of work, and especially when you're on a steep slope, because all the stones sometimes run away of you, and you've got to go and get them. And so you've got to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and from a working farm point of view, we're almost lucky, aren't we, that we've got everybody that's come before us has put them walls there. We don't have to bother with fences in a lot of cases. They're there.
No, that's right. All the materials there. Well, nearly all of it. Yeah.
So the final person that we're speaking to on this episode is Laura Mealing. So Laura is a land management advisor at the Yorkshire Dales National Park. I wanted to get Laura's take on all this restoration of walls and barns, because I think when you grow up in this area or you live here, you take all these things for granted. And from a working farm point of view, it's pretty simple. You want your walls up to keep your sheep in. However, as we'll hear from Laura, there's very much more to these structures in terms of habitat creation and heritage. So let's hear what Laura's got to say.
I'm Laura Mealing. I'm the Land Management Advisor at the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority, and I work across the farm team and the woodlands team, helping land managers and farmers get into the different schemes.
Right, Laura. So this episode then is all about restoring barns and drystone walls. So we've heard from Julia Carr. She spoke through her barn restoration, but it was actually a brewery back in the olden days, and she's gone through all that. So that was amazing. The other person that we've spoken to is Chris Fawcett. So Chris has restored an old sheepfold. Now Chris is a drystone waller by trade, so as my granddad would say, he's made a great job of it. It's a beautiful, if you watch the YouTube video, anybody listening, there's some fantastic pictures. And obviously the main focus of that for Chris was to restore it so that it was functional, because he's got a working sheep farm. So what I just want to talk to you about today is, I suppose, really the heritage of these walls, because the Yorkshire Dales is known for its drystone walls. Why are they so important?
So drystone walls are an intrinsic part of the landscape character of the Yorkshire Dales. They date back to monastic times. So we're talking the 12th, 13th century. So there's that historical significance there. And they've developed as different settlements have come in. They really ramped up their significance with the Enclosures Act. In the 18th and 19th century. So many of them are, a couple of hundred years old, if not more. And as part of that, they have a historical and cultural significance.
So with the Enclosures Act, then obviously that is exactly what it says. When we went from a move from common land to private land, the stone, I suppose the reason they've cropped up in the Dales is because the stone was there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So most of the stone has been locally gathered by hand. So when you look at the barns and the walls in the areas, they're usually indicative of the underlying geology. And that's why they they fit in with the landscape, because they're reflecting the stone that you'd find on the natural screes and all the rock slopes in the area.
And we were just saying before we press record, we've both I've had a visitor to the Yorkshire Dales from Canada who was just in absolute awe of the fact that you can get a drystone wall going up a vertical slope. Swaledale, for instance, is known as being one of the most iconic landscapes in the whole of Western Europe, with its walls and its barns and stuff. And you were saying, tell us about the work that you were doing and what that man took to you.
Yeah, so I was out measuring some gaps for one of the local landowners to help him with his application for the National Grant Scheme. And as I was out, I was just taking photos and pasting them out. And I had a gentleman come up and he asked what I was doing. And then he was just like, well, I've come on holiday to see these, and this is what you do for a living. And he was absolutely amazed. And as I was doing that throughout the day, I had several different members of the public come up and asking, a bit more detail about the walls. And it just shows that interest from people from other parts of the country and the world. In the walls.
It's easy, isn't it, when you live around here, to just take them for granted and you almost don't notice them. But I must admit, when I go anywhere else, I notice that they're not there. I notice that they're not there. So that's amazing. Okay, so talk to us about nature then, because they're real habitats, aren't they, these walls, for all sorts of stuff, some really rare stuff.
Again, because they they've been handpicked from the ground. A lot of them have carried mosses and vegetation from where they've been picked up, and they've now formed part of that wall structure. So the drystone walls in the national park, they've got very significant plant species on them. There is one moss which is locally significant. It's only found in the area around Pen y Ghent. And the wildlife officer has recently just told me that it's also only found in southern Europe. So it's the only part of the UK that is found is around Pen y Ghent. And then the rest is in southern Europe. And yes, so they're very important for different assemblages of mosses, lichens, plants, ferns, but they also create their own little micro habitats. So especially where they're found around woodlands, and you get that leaf litter that falls into the walls and it breaks down gradually, and it creates a habitat for invertebrates like snails. We do have some rare snails in the national park. There's a wall up in Aysgarth that has a vertigo snail. And I know we've had some specialists that have come up and monitor that in the past. So that's how significant it is. They also form corridors for wildlife to move through those otherwise open landscapes. And they're especially important where, the higher altitudes or where the climatic conditions are not suitable for other corridors such as hedgerows. So those walls fill that function of providing a safe corridor for wildlife to move through the habitat.
Well, I've obviously done a whole episode on hedges, and I'd never actually thought of walls as being, that providing that connectivity. And like you say, you'd never grow a hedge, would you, in some places? No. So that I can totally see that, and as a really important way for wildlife to travel from different parts of the Dales. So just talk to us then about the variation, Laura, of these walls.
So there's different types of walling that goes on throughout the park nationally as well. But you can go into a certain area of the park and the walls will be completely different to another part. And this is either due to a local style, or sometimes it can be just to the waller and where the wallers come from and the style that they bring with them. And this could be the difference between how the through stones are looking to the top stones. There's different styles of the top stones going on. So next time you look at a wall, and then you're moving to another part of the park, you can have a look and see if there's any difference between them. Because I know there have been books written by people on the different styles, because there's so many. And there are people that can identify where they are in the park from the style of the wall, where they're, the specialists.
That's amazing.
I know, it's mind-blowing to me. I mean, that specific difference. And then when we go out, so with some of the walling that we do through FiPL, because there are national grant schemes out there, we have to be quite selective about the walls that we can grant fund. So they're usually where they're special walls, historically significant, or they're larger, they're listed, or where they're a sheepfold, a pinfold, there's a historic significance. So often we'll have our historic environment officer come out with us and he'll write a specification so that it is still matching that style.
So it's got to be done in the same way.
It's got to be done in exactly the same way.
I see.
Yeah.
God, I've never noticed that. I'll be looking now. I'll never take so much interest in Drystone walls. But it is. I said this to Chris when I spoke to him. It is such a skill, is Drystone walling. It's a form of art, really, isn't it? And you only need to go to some of the local shows, and they have the Drystone walling competitions where people do it all day on show day, putting the wall back up. So it is amazing, really. But I didn't know that there were different styles. So that's really interesting as well.
And following from what you just said there, I know that a few years back there were some local Drystone wallers that went out and were doing some demonstrations in New York.
Amazing.
So they got invited out, and I know we've had groups come out from different parts of Asia to come out and look at how their walls differ to the walls in the Dales, and so I suppose that's how culturally significant they are. That there's that interest from around the world, and yet, as you say, it's a real skill, and it's a skill that most farmers in the Dales have.
Yes.
Because they have to maintain their walls. They're their boundaries, their stock boundaries, and a lot of them take great pride in it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of farmers out there that it's a great pride to them to have their walls up and looking smart, and it's not just about being a stock-proof boundary. They want their farm to be an exemplar of what that cultural significance is in the Downs.